Howdy healers, welcome to Zero to KSM Hero, a series where I'll be attempting the Keystone Master Challenge in patch 9.1.5 on a brand new healer. The rules are simple. For the Alliance, least favored healer, least popular covenant, only moderate help from main character allowed, no linking Raider IO to main character, hugging only, and finally the challenge must be finished before posting the first video to avoid any external help or assistance, and of course for the sake of integrity. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode where once again we end up in a group with somebody we've seen before. This is Hara from the Necrotic Wake in the last video, so it didn't even take that long to run into him, and it looks like it was kind of by chance, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, I wanted to talk about a couple of little things while we're zooming over to the dungeon. So the first one is that I do want to address that yes, this is outdated content. Everything here is from last season. I had like 93 episodes, not 93 episodes, but like 93 dungeons it took me to get to Keystone Master. So we're not even like halfway through that. So for me to do like a wrap-up episode and start a new series is just, I don't even know how I could do that in like a reasonable way. So like I know that Growl did his wrap up with the last like 8 hours or whatever, but I have way more than 8 hours left on this. Like way, way, way more. So it puts me in a tough position because we've been in the new patch for a while. I've barely touched Mythic Plus for the new patch. I've only done a couple dungeons. Not even on this character, on a completely different character. Yeah, it's not fun being so far behind. I totally thought that I would have a lot more time to do editing, but unfortunately, like, even if I did post unedited videos, which would be way faster, I could post, like, a dungeon a day or something like that. It would be done much quicker. Like, there's no voicing in most of those videos. Like, toward the end, I get somewhere I do talk more just because I was recording on, like, holidays and stuff where I had time and could speak a lot out loud. But most of the earlier episodes here, I don't say anything on the mic because I'm not alone and I don't want to disturb my partner. So, anyway, today's episode is going to be heavily edited like the last one, specifically because we have 4 untimed dungeons to get through, and the untimed the untimed slog is a mess. It's difficult to like parse. You know what I mean? It makes you feel like garbage when you go in and do multiple keys at a certain level and none of them are timed. So, we're headed out to Sanguine Depths to do a plus 11, and everyone in this group seems like super friendly and nice. And again, we ran into Hara in the last dungeon, so it's pretty cool that we get to see them again. And now we get a whole new squad to work with, which, I mean, it sounds great, right? And everybody, again, is like really chatty and friendly, and it's like awesome. So, I come into this group with some high hopes. Like we're doing pretty good. And there's actually an interesting little quirk here at the beginning where the demon hunter gets invited to the group, but it was a misclick. He meant to invite, I think, the mage that applied, but he invited the demon hunter and was prepared to kick him because we don't have heroism. But I said that I would buy drums because I was already an Ouroboros, so I quickly bought drums and we kept the demon hunter. So, let's jump in and see how this one went. Alright, so we are prepared. We are zooming. And you would think, like, a group like this where everybody seems talkative and, pretty chill about, I don't know, where everybody just seems like they are good at communicating, maybe, you think that this kind of dungeon would go really well. And we're starting off, like, pretty okay. The demon hunter that was accidentally invited is blasting, so he was not a mistake to bring, to be honest with you. Like, just right out of the gate, it's like, alright, this guy's actually doing pretty good. We also established we do have a Venthyr. The warrior is Venthyr. There is a discussion at some point in this dungeon, like, about if we were going to, like, use the urn or whatever, but, like, here is a perfect opportunity to use one, and our Venthyr is not doing it for whatever reason. The just to be, like, perfectly clear, because I guess I don't know if it's clear or not to people, but when it comes to your covenant stuff, sometimes, especially if it's been established that you are indeed of your covenant, it's your job to just do the covenant thing. So if you are a Kyrian and you're a necrotic wake, it's just expected that you're going to summon your owl and, you know, have him repair the Goliath. Like, you don't have to announce that in chat, or the tank doesn't need to tell you to do it. You should just be doing it. So I feel like there was a little bit of a disconnect here where we have a Venthyr, but nobody is, like, discussing the urns, but at the same time the tank is assuming that the... Man, he got blasted. The tank is just assuming that the person who's in charge of doing the Venthyr thing is gonna do their job. So, this is chewing through my mana so fast, but I genuinely think if I was playing, you know, a fist weaving spec, like, I wouldn't have been able to heal through that at all, just because the tank is taking so much damage. I don't know why I Feline Stomp there. It seems like a really dumb thing to do. This is a perfect instance of they're pulling some stuff, but I have some time to drink, so I should definitely be drinking a little. I should have just cocooned him to save myself some energy. And probably mana, now that I think about it. But I didn't, so it is what it is. This is me wishing I had an interrupt right now. Or ever, actually. I love being line of sighted. Especially with low mana and with this executioner who does, like, a ton of damage. I'm just blowing, like, a bunch of random cooldowns because I don't know what to do. Like, I have nothing. I do have IQD, so I should probably be using IQD. Or mana potting here. Again, it's Grievous Week. I immediately sit to drink because there's no choice. But I have to stand because I'm afraid, like, my party's gonna die if I don't stand. And then, see, here again, we have, like, a nice little bit from this tank who's like, yeah, I should have looked at your mana. That was my bad. And it's like, alright, you know. And this is one of those things where it's like, alright, you're telling me to get mana, but you did keep moving, and I got a little... Like, it makes me nervous when people move on without me too far ahead, and I might have to walk through mobs or whatever. Alright, so... Tank just, like, dies really fast. I should have focused healing him a little bit more, I think. I got seated. I should have just cocooned this guy, like, honestly. I don't... Or myself. So, basically, you can see that, like, right out of the gate, this group isn't going so well. We've had 7 deaths already, and we haven't even got to the first boss. I've seen worse, but, you know, I've seen better, too. So, something to keep in mind about demon hunters is that they are kind of fragile on pull sometimes, and I really should have been expecting that, but also, like, there was that issue with, yeah, so, like, the other demon hunters calling out, like, you know, that went bad because you guys didn't wait until tank had aggro before you, like, leapt in there and started blasting, which, you know, this isn't like, look, I have never liked the idea that aggro is difficult to get as like a tank game. I've never enjoyed that. In fact, when I had to fight for aggro a lot, I didn't enjoy tanking very much. Later in Cataclysm, when they sort of reverted that change, I did a lot of tanking. But until that point, I was like, no, I really don't want to tank because there is nothing more miserable than trying to deal with that. Alright, so we can attribute our lack of interrupts to inspiring, of course, but like, gotta blast down the inspired mob as fast as possible. And sometimes I think people focus more on AoE and blasting the pack down. However, if you have a team of 3 DPS who are all doing nothing but AoE, the priority target doesn't die very quickly. Our Windwalker is getting some ping as well. One thing I am pretty grateful for is that for the most part those orbs are a healer job. And the reason I'm grateful for that is that you do have some control over when you feel ready to take them. I did use Cocoon. Like, somebody pat me on the back here, because I feel like I've been really bad about using it up to this point. If it makes anybody feel better, my new character that I made and started doing Keystones on is another Mistweaver, this time a Fistweaver, and I've been using Cocoon a lot more. I think I learned my lesson. Because it's on such a short cooldown, it's like 2 minutes. Why wouldn't you just send it? It'll be back before you know it. Alright, so I was trying to get like a little bit of healing just to top off Grievous there, and then sit and drink. And luckily it worked out for me that I was able to do that. Normally speaking, I would say I wouldn't chew through that much mana so quickly, but it is what it is sometimes. Better to be a little wasteful with your mana than to just, like, let people die. Alright, so our Windwalker's doing a lot of CC this run to kind of, like, help us kill things without worrying about interrupts. And in this pool specifically, I think it's extremely important to do that when your group is maybe not the best. And we're clearly not the best as we still have our 7 deaths on the board already, so I don't know why I grabbed that. I was already at full mana, but, you know. I almost ran into Sagadon because I'm stupid. By the way, the stroke that I nearly had when I got too close and realized he was standing there. I know some people didn't like the Tormented affix, but I thought it was alright. Still better than Pride, but for all I know, like, if I'm remembering correctly, a lot of people were skipping this guy in this dungeon because the last boss is, like, physical damage isn't that high, but Stone Ward OP. I'm gonna miss that one. Love being silenced. Silenced again. The silence sometimes doesn't really mean that much here, and then other times it's literally like a wipe because you got silenced. I'm kind of the opinion that if the group wipes because you got silenced, like, they probably deserve it. Like, we keep running back to line of sight these guys around by the urn, and, like, I don't know, man, but it seems kind of like we're not using the urn. Even though we're standing right on it. Okay, so they want drums on the next boss, which, frankly, I do too, because that boss sucks. I was playing a little spicy there. I could have pulled trash by mistake. Alright, so now it's coming to light that, like, we haven't used the urns, and that's actually the Venthir's job to do. to do. That's a little cringe, I'll admit it. And, like, the thing is like, otherwise these people seem like decent players or whatever, but then you come in here and they don't even seem to know, like, that they should be clicking on the urns. Because it's like, just because we have a Venthir doesn't mean anyone in the group can click on them. I mean, I guess that would be kind of cool. At least he's dying quickly. That's... I can give my group that. Alright, here he goes. He's gonna open it now. Alright, let's zoom. We actually have some, like, a buff going here for a bit. I don't know why I stood in that. I should have cocooned somebody there. I made sure to heal everybody before I rezzed the Windwalker so that they weren't taking grievous damage. Alright, they said drums, but I've already, like, forgotten, apparently. I definitely should have cocooned the tank. Almost landed on the boss! Timer's gonna run a little tight here, so I should be contributing to DPS. Especially because we have this mini-boss here to worry about, too. I don't know why I just moved backward instead of, like, to the side. That was weird of me. But for some reason, it seemed to work. I cocooned again. Go me. But here's the thing, like, I cocooned more, but, like, also it's only on a 2-minute cooldown. I could have used it, like, 4, 5, 6 times more than I did. So I noticed that, like, everybody ran away from the middle. So something I've learned about this phase is that, like, it doesn't matter who you are, you should just focus on not standing in stuff. Even if you're doing 0 damage. Just because it does so much damage. And I think it puts a dot on you too, which does even more damage. That it's like, it's not even worth risking getting hit by that. Just keep moving. And somebody's dead, so I take an extra orb. But that post-diffuse magic didn't do any damage to me, which is awesome. Here we had two people that got hit by that, and it's miserable. It's easier said than done to battle res somebody here, just because, like, the boss is always wailing on you, so as a tank, like, you don't really have a lot of opportunity to battle res. Tank says it was on cooldown, but, like, even if it wasn't, that's not a fight where it's easy to battle res if you're the tank. I definitely should be in there helping DPS because the timer is tight. And our Demon Hunter DC'd. So, like, I want to make it clear that this Demon Hunter was doing quite a bit of damage. Probably a little more than most of the others, most of the time. So, like, he was an accidental invite, but it's not as if he was a carry. So, this is one of those situations where you just have to hope he comes back. But, spoiler, he's not going to. Part of me is like, I should just cocoon the tank here and then, like, contribute to DPS or something, maybe. But at the same time, I'm like, the gauntlet's coming up, so, like, maybe I want to save cocoon for that. But my party's taking quite a bit of damage here. And it's not because the Demon Hunter DC'd necessarily, but, like, it also is. Because if the Demon Hunter was here, the mobs would already be dead. So... then things just kind of go to shit. I probably could have lived there maybe if I would have made some better choices, but I don't know. That was a miserable experience. So I need to drink before I go across the bridge. We don't even have like 6 minutes to get to the end here. And shit's wild enough that like I'm pulling healing aggro, so that was something. I guess 7k healing is... Alright. We have a couple stacks now. And this should help. But like you're thinking about like look at the timer at 340 right now, and then you're like, alright, if the Demon Hunter hadn't been offline, like how much faster would these mobs have died? Especially considering how much damage some of these people are doing. The Demon Hunter would be doing just as much, if not more. So like clearly at this point it's not a timed key. But I would argue when we wiped in the hallway, like right after the third boss, it was kind of a key moment that told us that this key was not going to be timed. This is definitely a release and run back situation. The problem with communicating in a dungeon like this, especially a timed one, is that who has the time to type that crap out? Like, we have 10 seconds left. We're clearly not gonna time this. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. I think in my notes I put that the key was untimed because the Demon Hunter disconnected. And I still think that he would have saved us like 3 or 4 minutes easily just by contributing to DPS because he was a good DPS. But I don't think that's the only reason why this key failed. Like, it's a contributing factor, and that alone could have saved it, which I think it's hard to explain, but it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so it wasn't the only contributing factor, but it could have saved us the key. But also, so could have been, getting all the urns from the beginning to kill, say, all the trash faster right there. Or, people not standing and stuff and dying or whatever. So it wasn't just that the Demon Hunter disconnected, but I'm going to give it to us for bingo anyway, just because we definitely, I feel, would have timed it if he hadn't disconnected. Especially with those stacks of the buff that we took in the hallway, like, he would have been blasting, so. On the plus side, nobody left the group just because we weren't going to time it. So I'll take that as, like, a win at least. Yeah, the key got bricked, but we did complete it. Still felt bad. It was an 11. I realize that's not showing on here very well, but it is an 11 Sanguine Depths. So, yeah, it felt pretty bad that like anything over a 10 or whatever that I've done has been like untimed. So then I have to sit there and think like, okay, is it me? Am I bad? Is that the reason why these aren't being timed? And then in this case, like on this last boss, yeah, I suck actually. I should definitely be using like Fort Brew to not only reduce the amount of damage that the attack does, but the bleed as well. But that's okay, we got it. And it was still score, like was it a lot of score? No, but it was still some score, which is nice. So the Warrior's like, yeah, we could have had that, maybe. And so then I contribute my opinion that, like, yeah, I do think if the Demon Hunter hadn't disconnected, we might have had it. But it's not his fault that he disconnected. I don't think he DC'd because of the timer. He would have just done it right after the boss if he was suspicious, right? But I definitely don't think that it was his fault necessarily. I don't think very many people just DC before the dungeon's over when it's still possible to time it, especially if their score isn't that spectacular to begin with. So I disagree about the reporting him. I don't think, one, it's not a reportable behavior, but two, because he's not griefing, right? But two, like, it may very well have just been like his computer, his internet, his connection could have been bad. I don't remember what server he was from, whatever. It's it's not worth reporting somebody over that. Like, you also didn't play well, Direblade, so, you know, if you would have used the urns from the beginning, we probably still would have timed it as well. So that's that on that. Moving on. Alright, so we queued up into a bunch of different groups, finally got into an 11 Theater of Pain. And this group is not especially chatty, so it's kind of different from the last one. However, the mage puts down a feast, which is pretty cool because it's not as if we've really seen that much yet. So we're just going to jump right into the dungeon and see what there is to talk about. So the first pool is one of the worst ones, of course. If you pull the tantruming mob with these guys, especially on Inspiring, it would be extremely painful, just because it's already, like, extremely painful. But the tank seems to know not to do that. So we seem like we're off to a pretty decent start. However, I've already warned you that the 4 keys in this video are all untimed, all straight in a row. In fact, they were done on the same day, 12/31/21, the New Year's Eve 2021. I did a lot of dungeons on New Year's Eve because I had the whole day off, so I just played game all day. As you do. So the first boss was pretty smooth, I think. However, the mage did not use time warp at any point, so eventually I gave up waiting for any kind of time warp or bloodlust or whatever, and I'm pretty sure that I popped drums here. Yeah, there we go. So, and it sounds dumb because, like, obviously, like, why not just, you know, wait, but your patience can only go so far with somebody that won't use time warp. And I say this even though I promised drums in the last dungeon and failed to deliver. So, you know, what does that mean, right? I'm not really any better. But it's not an ability baked into my class, right? Like, please pay more attention if you are, you know, make sure that you're using spells that are important to use. Just because, you know, why wouldn't you? So this is one of the harder pulls, I think, in this dungeon. There's a couple pulls that are pretty rough here, but these Portal Guardians do quite a bit of damage, and you can't always trust your group to, like, use cooldowns here just to mitigate damage, and there's a lot of stuff to, like, you know, dispel. I definitely recommend saving some kind of cooldown for this pool, no matter who you are. If you're a druid, you should probably save maybe Trank for it, because the first Portal Guardian is hard, but if he's pulled by himself, he's not that bad. However, if you pull, like, him with other mobs, then he's really hard. But these guys are hard too, so... And you're always going to get 3 mobs with this one no matter what. So the druid battle res the mage, which I disagree with. We were practically done. I could have just quickly res them after. Wouldn't waste a battle res on that. But it is what it is. Alright, so this is another pool that tends to go wrong in this dungeon. Mostly based off of lack of interrupts. And you can see the only person that has interrupted so far is the druid tank. And that's bad. So I definitely should have been dispelling that. Like, I should have dispelled something immediately, but I end up getting seated so fast, like, I can't really do anything. And while I'm seated, the mage dies with ice block up. So, you know, that's cool. Knowing what I know now about this area, I would do just about anything to stun some mobs or something, because it's awful. I was gonna follow that guy, but then I realized that, like, wrong way, actually. So, things are looking kind of bad here. I say when you have this many problems in this wing of the dungeon, I don't know why I stopped to heal him. You heal up when you take the portals. I just panic. Old school healer mentality, that's what I'm gonna call it. Anyway, yeah, that platform kind of sucks. I mean, I think it's worse than the big one with the wind speaker guys because even though the tornadoes are there, there's a little more space to dodge them, and if there's no it's not that there's no magic damage going out, but it's a little bit less. It doesn't feel as bad. All right, so this is another tough boss when people don't actually know the mechanics, which let's just say in a 10 or higher is extremely cringe. Like, I don't know, you've had plenty of time to practice this. So, again, my mantra here is to leave the problem on the tank if it ends up on the tank and anybody else because the tank has mitigation that they're probably actively using. Um, so here we have a soul running around free, and the mage clearly does not know what to do. They also can't lust because they are silenced due to, not getting their soul back. And they actually tried to run out of the room to to avoid the mechanic because they literally didn't know what to do. So I've kept them alive like an unreasonably long amount of time, and I should have just let them die to begin with. This was a waste of a battle res if somebody doesn't even know the mechanics, and also didn't lust on pool, like even though they said 2 seconds before they pulled to do it. So at this point, I'm kind of thinking, maybe the mage doesn't actually know what lust means. Because, like, one, that's not the name of the spell. Two, that's not even the alliance name of the spell. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so like maybe if you're talking to somebody in a random group and you don't know what they know, you may be better off calling it time warp for a mage, primal lust for a hunter, heroism for a shaman. Anyway, I I'm sitting here like, I mean, I could have used drums, right? But like, I don't want to. We have a mage in the group. I shouldn't have to spend my money on drums when we have a mage. Also, this is so stupid, but I think it helps people to just lay dead on the floor. And I hope if you lay dead on the floor in a fight like this, that you try to watch what other people are doing to see how the fight goes. I mean, granted, if you're dumb enough to queue up for a 10 and you don't actually know the mechanics, like, that seems like you're probably also too stupid to know to watch a video, but, yes, I am a little salty this morning, but it do be like that. And you can only put up with so much. You can only see so many people failing mechanics in like 10 plus dungeons before you start to slowly lose your mind. All right, so Gorchop Wing is, as usual, I think, is very healing intensive and frustrating. If Revival had a much shorter cooldown, I feel like I would use it a lot more often, but the 3 minutes makes it difficult to want to use because especially in a place like this where you're going to get a lot of diseases and and you can only dispel one at a time, it feels kind of bad to use it. So it kind of makes you want to be like, oh, I need to save it for when like it's a real emergency or whatever. But what ends up happening is that it feels like shit. So, um, I think overall the Gore Chop Wing in this dungeon was pretty smooth. Like obviously healing intensive, but still fairly smooth, all things considered. Like nobody was out here dying on trash, and we were getting interrupts, and well, mostly from the druid, but we can keep an eye on avoidable damage taken down there to just kind of see like what's up, but nothing is bad. Like the group is actually handling the trash here surprisingly well, which sort of shook me after that fight, the last boss fight where like clearly people didn't know mechanics. So we're struggling a little bit on this boss, and I think the reason is because he's just taking so long to die, and I feel like I am hemorrhaging mana just to keep people alive. And you can see where the boss's health is. And I don't even think Gorechop is that hard of a boss generally. So it feels a little extra bad he's when you're stuck here for a long time. Usually he's one of the easier fights, but not today. So this is my bad. I didn't move fast enough and I got blasted out to silence. But luckily I was able to move out of the way of the chains before they caught me. This fight is pretty rough in general if you get caught by the chains, so we don't want that. So I'm already dry on mana, which feels pretty bad. I don't even get caught by the chains exactly, but I think because they killed me, it did a weird thing. That was my fault, by the way. I should have been watching what I was doing, actually. So, the trash up to Zab was totally fine. Like, maybe a bit slow, whack-a-mole with the healing bars, but nothing crazy. So, Zab himself actually goes really surprisingly well, but you can see by the timer that, like, it's very clear that we're not going to be timing this, and it's, like, it's a slow... It's gonna be, like, things are living too long. Like, one of our DPS is, like, a little extra bad. But it happens, you know, whatever. I'm not under any delusions here that we're gonna time this. And at this point, like, I think we're all just sticking around because it's still better to complete it. Maybe. Unfortunately, it does show up as an incomplete, or no, as a completed but untimed dungeon, so people will notice that, and it feels bad. But what can you do? So, now we have the final boss. And the only thing that happens here is that our mage, who has died over and over and over and over in this dungeon, dies yet again, and also does not use time warp when asked. Like, I don't even know what to say about that. It was cringy. So after the dungeon, I, tell them, like, hey, if you didn't know, when the tank asks for lust, what they mean is that they want you to use time warp. And the mage comes back with some sarcastic bullshit right out of the gate, which kind of put me in a sour mood because it's like, you are busy being dead because you suck and you don't even know the mechanics of this dungeon. Like, I don't know what else to tell you, honey, but you're not good at this game. And neither am I, like, for the record, I'm not good either, but at least I'm not out here trying to make it sound like the reason I didn't use one of my core class abilities was because I was busy being dead. Like, you weren't dead on pull on any of those bosses, dear. Use Time Warp if you knew the whole time. So that was that. A frustrating dungeon, not because it took like 100 years or because people were especially bad, but because they were just bad enough, even me, my playing wasn't great, that like two of us that were playing poorly just dragged the whole group down. So yeah, that was not a fun experience. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. So speaking of unfun dungeons, Mists was pretty unfun too. So my manner of thinking was, I've done a 10, but it wasn't timed, so maybe a 9 that is timed will make up for it. Also, maybe I just suck too much to do 11s. I don't know. Like, the pattern, there's been a kind of a consistent pattern here, which is me depleting keys that are 10 or higher. So like maybe it's just me actually. So I do what any good citizen would do, and I jump back in, but they invite a tank whose rating is like less than half of what mine is, and whose gear is worse than mine for a 9, which it's not that you can't do it, but also like if anybody in the group is bad, it may not be carryable or even doable. So things don't really start off that bad, but we do have a skip almost like immediately that just fails. And this isn't uncommon. If you don't Ring of Peace that mob in the exact right direction, it's like you failed. I don't even know why I bother popping cooldowns for this, because this is like almost always a guaranteed wipe. So I was worried, like, well, maybe I can heal through it, maybe I can heal through it. But what usually ends up happening is it's not healable just because, well, in this case I got seated, but even if I hadn't gotten seated, I would have died. Like, if I hadn't been seated, I would have just been dead, and that wouldn't have made it any faster. So we wiped and had to go again. And to make it a little bit worse, honestly, the tank doesn't even know what just happened. They only noticed the third bow breaker and they didn't realize that it was that the skip failed and that's what happened. So that's not a good start to any dungeon. You would think the maze would be not a problem really at this level, but then in the middle of combat, running back from being dead, which their death was pretty much my fault, the demon hunter runs into the wrong maze area somehow, even though, like, the rest of us are fighting. So, like, they're just literally not paying attention to what they're doing. They run into the wrong area, and we all get sent back to the beginning mid-combat, which is just fantastic. To my credit, I held my tongue. But only in the dungeon. Here, I'm not holding it at all. I hate it when people do that. Like, please, for the love of God, just pay attention. Then we have the fantastic combo of the inspiring mob pool that where you need to CC and then nobody CC'd. So we sit in combat with this crap for like literally 5 minutes because, I don't know, we don't want to wipe or something. And it's super frustrating, but we do manage to separate the pack by, I think somebody taunted. So, whatever works, dude. And actually, after watching that, I think I tried that a couple times myself later. Like, better to heal, two quote unquote tanks than to deal with the issue. So, like, then we have the same problem that we had before, where, like, separating them isn't doing any good if people don't actually keep them separated. So, yeah, I taunted it back at me. And my deep hope is that nobody taunts it back. But that's fine, because I have taunt. I will taunt it back to me if I have to. This was by far, like, the worst part. And then I para it. But, like, this pull took, like, literally just minutes by itself. Because I don't even know. Very frustrating, though. And I think the most frustrating thing about it was the tank acting like we're all stupid and that the DPS are all idiots because, I just assumed everybody knew how to target, heals, and interrupt. And it's like, it's Inspiring Week. You can't do that with an inspired mob in the pack. Hello? Why did you think that we pulled the one guy away? Hello? Anyway, like, I thought the tank understood because they didn't taunt it back. But, like, no, they had no idea what they're doing. Like, I guess this is what you get when you invite a tank that has, like, almost no score to your +9. Again, 9 is a key that nobody wants to do anyway, but, like, still, you don't want to invite somebody that doesn't even know how Inspired works. That's a little cringe. We almost wiped a couple times on Mistcaller, mostly because of the stupid foxes and, nobody CCing them, which is, like, a little extra cringe because me and the other monks should have been able to, like, keep them CC'd pretty easily, but, it is what it is. And then sometimes they spawn on top of the melee or whatever, and if I was dumb, I was standing in melee, which I know I'm supposed to be there, but, like, in idiot pug groups where, like, they've already proven that they don't know what they're doing, maybe it's better to just keep your distance, because, you gotta do what you gotta do. So we do almost wipe, but luckily hang in there and get the boss down. So we get to the final boss with about, like, 1.75 minutes to go, and obviously we're not capable of taking the boss down that fast. But, we do our best. It just turns out that our best is really bad, actually. So we have, like, 2 melee DPS plus a tank, all with low interrupt cooldowns, and nobody interrupts Infestor, which is cringe because, like, the tank who just complained that they thought that people knew how to interrupt, like, is now not interrupting themselves. So it's like, look, I know the timer was gonna count down and, like, we weren't gonna get, we weren't gonna time it, but if you would have interrupted, it at least wouldn't have been as painful. But unfortunately, I'm the first one to die, so I look like an idiot. And luckily die right before the boss dies. So I get exactly 0 score for this key. So it was a complete waste of my time, I guess. And then I have to tell people that it's priority to interrupt Infestor. Like, and maybe they knew that, but like, why are there only 2 interrupts on the board? Yeah. So that felt bad. So yet another deplete in my list of depletes, and all on the same day, no less. So let's go deplete another key, because what else could be, like, what could be more fun than that at this point, right? Like, it's a losing streak. Might as well keep it going, I guess. It can only get better from here, right? Spoiler, it doesn't. In fact, I would say that it gets worse. I get invited to a plus 12 Mists of Tirna side. This is after I just depleted one. So I'm feeling pretty excited because I didn't think I was going to get into a group again that fast. It takes a little while for us to assemble, but sometimes that happens, so it's not really anything to worry about. However, when we get to the first boss, we've practically depleted the key already. So, I mean, that kind of says exactly what it needs to, but this was what I would call a disaster run, honestly. The first couple of pulls aren't bad. We do the skip, and it seems to go well, and then the tank gets, like... I could have definitely kept healing him, but I did not expect him to die as fast as he did. And then, of course, as soon as the tank is dead, the DPS start dying as well. We got a battle res off, but it's pretty clear at this point that, like, we're going to be struggling a little bit. And then we also have, our paladin who released instead of, and understandably so, because he probably thought we were going to wipe. And we're at that point where it's like a little bit scary because it's like, all right, so if he comes, like if the paladin comes back to us, he's going to bring those mobs. Like they're not going to be CC'd probably, so that could be bad. He could pull aggro if we're unlucky. The mage CC'd, which helped, but like, of course the paladin just brought the mobs to us because he couldn't do the skip. So instead of waiting for us to like figure it out, he just showed up. So that felt pretty bad. But hey, it's one wipe. It's not that bad, right? We still got 25.5 minutes. It should be okay. It was not okay. For Varuth, everybody just like seems to not want to stack, and they get feared over and over again because apparently didn't learn their lesson or read up on the fight like even once, which is awful. We pull the boss with a little over 19 minutes left on the timer, which isn't great, but it could be worse, right? But then, like, people die. The paladin does apologize and says that he's having a problem with his son, which, I totally get. It happens. So the tank decides that it's a waste of time to try to keep doing this when the DPS are, one, dead, but also, like, the tank's like, we don't have the DPS for this boss, man. Like, the mage is like, why? Like, I should be the lowest, like, and they're the party leader, so they probably invited better geared people, and it's pretty cringy that we can't even get the boss down on a 12. So, the tank and I together end up being able to reset the boss, and the tank waits around to CC the mob. Yeah, tank is 100% right. We only did 40% with 2 stuns. Paladin had the best damage, but like he can't stay alive. I didn't type it in the chat, to my credit, but like, Yeah, if the paladin had the potential for the best DPS easily. So it's a little, and here he is just sitting up there, like we're down to 14 minutes, we're at the first boss, and I'm sitting here like, honest to God, this is just me doing this now, thinking to myself, like I would not stay to complete this now. Um and to the mage's credit here, he's like, one more try, okay? If we can get it, then we can just complete, right? And I'm here for that. I'm okay with trying to complete. Why wouldn't you? But like, our timer is looking pretty pathetic at 13 and a half minutes, less than that even, when we pull the first boss. And we don't even have time warp because it's on cooldown, so we're in for a time. We get the first boss down with 9.5 minutes left on the timer. Now, to be perfectly honest with you, I should have just left. Sorry to the mage, you're fine. I'm not criticizing your playstyle or anything. None of that. But this was a waste of everybody's time and energy. And this is something I didn't figure out for a very, very, very long time doing this challenge, is that sometimes staying is a waste of time. Not just for me personally, but for everybody in the group. Like, if we would have just dissolved, the mage could have, gotten his 11 and just reran it. You know what I mean? Probably with better people, and it would have been fine. But as it is, we've got 9.5 minutes to finish the entire dungeon. We're definitely not going to be doing that. And yet, for some reason, all of us feel guilty about bricking the key, so we stay to complete. We have a bad time immediately on the incinerator because only the tank is interrupting, even though we have 3 DPS with interrupts. And, don't get me wrong, I know that the Boomkin interrupt sucks in a big way. Like, it's awful. I think most Boomkin would, in a heartbeat, take a normal ranged interrupt over Solar Beam, any day, because Solar Beam sucks. It's not reliable, it's got a 1-minute cooldown. Did I mention that it's not that reliable? It's like having a normal interrupt on a 1-minute cooldown. Why would I take that over a 30 or 21 second cooldown mages or marksman hunters have? So, we have 2 people with longer cooldown interrupts, but the only person who interrupted was the tank. And we have 3 DPS all perfectly capable of doing at least 1 interrupt each on the incinerator, and they just straight up didn't do it. Yet again, we run into the annoying group with the inspiring mob that, for some reason, nobody knows they need to CC, so it feels a little extra bad because we're stuck here for God knows how long. Hold on, and I'm going to find out because I don't want you to watch all of it, but we're literally doing that till we have 2.5 minutes left, so that it felt like an eternity. The timer runs down before we're even out of the maze. Why did any of us stay in this group to complete it? It wasn't worth it to anyone in this group, not even the mage, unless he got something cool from the vault. And hey, Cindy, if you're watching this and you got something cool in your vault, then it was totally worth it for all of us. But if you didn't even get anything cool in your vault or whatever, this was not worth anybody's time. But it's not your fault. It's the fault of the entire group for staying as long as we did. So we had a bit of an issue where the Boomkin died because they got the magic debuff, and I needed to dispel it, but I couldn't stop healing the tank, or I was afraid the tank was gonna die. So, we had a nice little combo, everything was fine, but the paladin decided that he was just gonna AFK and be an asshole. Honestly, he was just gonna, I don't know, get up and leave. Instead of him actually just dropping group or whatever. He just decided to just stand there. So the group decides, maybe we could try to 4-man it, and then we can give it a shot. We have to do the mechanics perfect, but let's just give it a go. Why not? So it takes us almost like 5 minutes to kill Mistcaller, but at least we did 4-man it, and we managed it, which is more than I thought we were going to be able to do. So that was cool. Um, it kind of just went to prove that like the paladin standing and stuff and not doing any mechanics there for a while and being distracted was probably the biggest reason why the whole beginning part was so bad, because Mistcaller went surprisingly well comparatively. So we do end up kicking the paladin mid-fight, and I just kind of send out a reminder. I probably sounded bitchy, but, and I was frustrated, but, like, this is kind of important information. Like, if you can avoid it, don't kick somebody mid-fight or invite them mid-fight, because it messes up the bars for stuff like voodoo, and I'm sure, like, I feel like healbot and stuff can get messed up too if, the game's trying to add or take away people while you're in combat. I know there's a few other add-ons that struggle with things like that as well, not just healing add-ons. So, like, when possible, kick when you're out of combat. So, on our way down to the last boss, like I mentioned that we're kind of short on interrupts here because the two DPS that we have both have long interrupts, especially the Boomkin. So, Tank needs to interrupt the Parasitic Infestor because like anything else that gets interrupted on that fight is just a bonus. Like I don't remember if it's what it's called, like consumption or something like that, can be interrupted at a certain point in the cast, and it's very useful to have somebody to interrupt that just because it gives you like you're dodging stuff a little bit less. But we're 4-manning it, so like if it takes us longer to kill the boss, whatever, just make sure you kill that mind control thing or interrupt the mind control thing, because if you don't, we're not even going to be able to complete this. We get the last boss down without a real problem, but then we wipe on the trash afterward to try to complete percentage, which is like mega cringe. But at this point, we've been so cringy, it's like, oh, what's another couple minutes of mega cringe, right? And like, we completed, but at what cost, man? At what cost? Um, yeah, so it's not a lot of fun. Let's just go with that. Luckily, a couple people do get loot at the end here, and everybody seems to be grateful that, we stuck it out, and, I just say thanks, take care, and I leave. So I kind of want to just drop some thoughts out about this, because the interesting thing about it is that, like, nobody in this group was an asshole or anything. Everybody seemed really nice and respectful. The tank didn't rage quit. The key holder didn't get pissy. Everybody was just kind of like, whatever. Because, I mean, I don't know, maybe we all knew it was a lost cause anyway. But we were wasting our time. But, we did manage it. And what's really frustrating is that nobody was rude or anything, so there was no reason to leave, and missing the timer by that much is, I mean, there's some benefits to it, right? But, so, like, here's my example. I'm applying to a group, and they look me up on Raider.io, and they see that the 12 that I've attempted here is untimed, but then they see how far over it's untimed, and that's like, well, they're an idiot who sticks with the dungeon even though it's like way over time, but also, like, at least they're not a quitter, so it gives information, but like somebody has to look and see, otherwise all they see is an untimed 12, and even then the information that they're getting from it is like not always to my benefit. So it's like, yeah, it's nice that she sticks around and doesn't, just abandon the group because the key's not going to time. But also sometimes you do need to know when to cut your losses, and she definitely didn't know to cut her losses here. So is that the kind of person we want to bring? But yeah, at least in my experience, most people aren't like popping by and looking you up on Raider.io to that extent for keys of this level. Now, if you're talking in the 20s, sure, they're probably looking you up before they invite. But, like, under 15, yeah, probably not going crazy. Alright, so let's look at bingo real quick here. We obviously got nothing for wholesome bingo with 4 terrible dungeons in a row. Um, but for painful bingo, we sure got a couple. So I'm gonna go ahead and give us heroism not used or used at the wrong time after discussion, because not only did I fail to use drums when I said I would, but the mage in the Theater of Pain did not time warp like at all. Also, we got ourselves, because of the mage and Theater of Pain, somebody in a plus 10 or higher doesn't know mechanics. Technically, I think we could take someone drops group when they realize we won't time because the paladin just went AFK, but I got a better one later, so we'll save that one. Um, a disconnect prevents the group from timing the key. I'm going to go ahead and give that to the Sanguine Depths, even though other things could have also helped us time the key, despite the disconnect, but, it's okay. So we did get a couple of painful ones, and it hurts, actually. Yeah, pretty bad. So this was a pretty heavily edited episode, and it took a very long time to put together, so I don't know if you'll see another episode on Wednesday or not this week. It's just one of those things where it takes such a long period of time to put these together and do the editing, and even though I don't do any like incredible editing work because obviously I don't have the skill or the time, like it still takes forever. So unfortunately, if you don't see an episode Wednesday, I threw it all into this one, all my effort into this one, but hopefully I'll be able to get something together for Wednesday as well. And if not, well, that's okay. I'll see you guys next week. Until then, happy healing.